Well, I hope you're doing well this weekend, whatever campus that you're at or whenever you're watching this. We are in week 2 of a series here at Grace called Life Change. And I want you to, again, hold those thoughts on Peter as we will be spending some time thinking about Peter and his story and what it can teach us about life change and about our own lives. But as we got into this series last weekend, we said we have a very specific hope for the series. We're coming off of a series where our conviction muscles were really challenged, our obedience muscles were really challenged, and we wanted to try and approach this series with a different mindset, a different goal in our process for those of us that are followers of Jesus, of living Jesus-centered lives. So go ahead and grab your notes on the back of your program. And this is what we just kind of laid out as the hope for the series. We said we're really just trying to put faith in our faith. We're trying to think of our faith, our relationship with God, and that faith is made up of the component of faith. How big do we believe God is? How much do we trust God? And do we live like that? And so if our faith is a balloon, how do we put air in it? How do we put confidence in it? How do we make sure that we're saying at the end of this series, I believe that God is more worthy of worship than ever. I believe that it's an incredible thing for people to meet and follow and share Jesus, that you want Jesus more at the center of who you are. If you don't know Jesus, that you would go, man, I'm interested in hearing more and learning more and hopefully connecting to the person of Christ. And if you're a follower of Jesus, you would pray differently. You would worship differently through song. You would give differently. You would just live differently. Because what we want to do is close this gap that so often exists between our belief generically, our theology, and our daily behaviors about the fact that we believe God is active and actually changing people. And we said as we think about that, we know that it's always good to get support for whatever case that we're making about anything. And we want support for our case that all these things about God are true and that we should follow him, we should worship him, we should go all in on him. And we said one of the ways to get that support, one of the ways to put faith in our faith is to look at the stories of other people that God has interacted with. And when we look at those stories, we see what God did in their life. And we see how they interacted with God. And we see who God is. And we get a clearer picture of God. And then ultimately, we walk away thinking something along this lines. We say, I see what God did in them and how that can happen with me. I see what God did in them and how that can happen with me. Man, I see how God put back together their marriage, and that's incredible. I see how God healed them from that addiction. I see how God gave them boldness and courage where before they were very timid. I see how God helped them get through that trial and that difficulty. I just see how God moved. And if God can do that in them, he can do that in me. If God can change them, then God can change me. And so last weekend, we spent some time saying that nobody is too far outside of the power of God to be reached. We said it this way. We said God can open anyone's eyes. And we talked about this man named Saul who God converted and turned into Paul. And if you missed that, I encourage you to go to the app or the website, listen to that, where hopefully we put faith in our faith as we looked at the story of Paul and we were challenged to think about what God can do. We want to keep looking at stories this weekend, think about the story of Peter and how that can change us as we see what God did in them and maybe what he could do in us. Now, maybe you're wired like me. I think a lot of people in our world, in our culture, where we live, where our church is, think this way. It's definitely a Western way of thought. It's kind of a leadership way of thought of stewarding life, which is I often make decisions and am trained to make decisions in the way that I navigate life around what's called ROI. And if you know what ROI is, it's return on investment. Right? That everything is kind of a cost-benefit analysis in the way you process your life. You look and you say, and I'm not saying this is good or bad, I'm just saying this is what a lot of us do. We look and we say, okay, if I do this, how long should I invest in that? How long should I keep giving to that? Should I trust that? And if it goes bad, when do I get out of it or should I get out of it? And we do this with investments. Whether that investment is a stock or Bitcoin or whatever it is, we go, should I stay in this? Should I get out? What's the cost-benefit analysis? We do this with our homes. We do this with our jobs. We do this with our majors in college. Should I stay in this? We do this in a relationship sometimes. What's the ROI on this? Am I gonna keep going back to this? And we look and we say, should I stay there? Should I not stay there? We do this with certain jobs that we have. What's the ROI on that? I should probably do it with my favorite sports teams because it's not working out so well most of the time with the ROI on that. We do it with the diet. We do it with training. In essence, we say, when do I get out and when do I stay in? We wrestle with, should we stay or should we go? It's almost like It's almost like we're trained to treat life like a game of poker. And if we were to treat life like a game of poker, this might become the theme song that we think about. And you can feel free to sing along, right? Know when to walk away. Know when to. Come on, sing it. Every campus, let's go. Yes, there we go. And scene, all right? And that's what we're trained to do, right? We're trained to look at life and we're trained to look at every situation, and there's a healthy discipline in life. And here's what that healthy discipline is. Ready? Fold the bad hands. That's what we're taught to do in life. Fold the bad hands. There's a parenting reality. There's a stewardship reality. There's a corporate reality in your job. There's a money reality that we're taught to fold the bad hands. People say things like, don't throw good money after bad. Stop wasting your time. How often are you going to keep going back to that broke thing? Can't you see that relationship's junk? Can't you see you keep going back and it keeps getting bad? Why is it that you can't understand that you're casting your pearls before swine, that it's a waste of time? That can't you see that it's just gonna continue to break? It doesn't make sense. And so we're trained to say, know when to hold them, know when to fold them. When the situation's bad, get away, don't count your chips, move on, get to the end of it, but fold the bad hands. That's what we're taught to do. And there's ultimately nothing wrong with that, but I wanna press something for a second. If we think about folding bad hands as built on ROI, a return of investment, how good something is and how worthwhile something is to invest in, all right? Here's a big question. What if God did an ROI on us? What if God did a return of investment on us? What if God took that same analogy and said, should I fold the bad hands? What if God looked at us and he said, when I evaluate that woman or that man, how consistently obedient will they be, or how consistently obedient is he or she? How radically faithful are they? How incredibly generous are they, and are they going to be? How willingly usable are they for my mission? Are they really the one that's gonna give me the most glory? Are they the most talented? Are they the most capable? Are they the most gifted? If he did an ROI on us, what would it look like? Now here's the thing. I know me, and if I was doing a cost-benefit analysis of God evaluating his investment in Keith Manier, I would look at him and say, fold, move on. Because I would imagine your story, if you're honest, is like mine. And here's the truth, friends. We give God reasons to fold on us all the time. Let's just be honest. If there is a God, and if he's perfect, and if he demands holiness back, and if he even is loving and all that stuff, and you look at it, there's a reality that when we look at our lives, we give reasons God to fold on us all the time. Come on, we're disobedient about the same things over and over and over again. There are people across our church this weekend that the truth is you've been praying the same prayer over and over and over. God, I will stop that. There's times where God gives us opportunities and we don't take advantage of them. There's times where God calls us into being generous and we stay stingy. If we're honest, we run when we should stay. We're quiet when we should talk. We talk when we should be quiet. Our faith is low when it should be great. We choose the world over God. We're selfish when we shouldn't be, and we should be selfless. I'm being honest. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but let's just be honest. We give God reasons to fold on us all the time. I would imagine at different times, the angels come in and they go into the throne room and they're like, really, God? You're gonna keep rolling with him? You're gonna keep rolling with her? There's gotta be someone else to invest in. I mean, the ROI, you've been working on this person for a long time, Lord. They've been claiming your name for years. And yet, as we consider this reality this weekend about life change, I have incredible news. That amidst all the reasons we give God to leave, he doesn't. For all the reasons we should have the hand folded on us, God stays in the game. This weekend, we're reminded through the person of Peter, in so many ways, his story is our story. It's a story that it's almost like the little girl sitting with the flower in the field, and the way she thinks about a boy thinking about her, it's sometimes the way we think about God. I love him not. I love him not. I love him not. We go back and forth over and over. We're on this roller coaster of obedience to God and then disobedience to God. Faith in God and then lack of faith in God. Courage for God and cowardice for God. It reminds us that our path and our relationship with God, and even listen to me, life change isn't a straight line. In fact, as I preach this weekend, the truth is I identify way more with Peter's story than I do with Paul's. Paul, who had this radical, and it seemed like everything just kind of got in line as the scales fell off his eyes. But Peter, man, he just bold then stupid, faithful then an idiot, courageous and then a coward. In fact, what I want to do for a moment is to just walk through some of the highlights of Peter's story. If you're not a Christian, you're not going to know who Peter is and what his story's about. And so I'll try to just give you a few pictures of it. If you are a follower, you could go back and kind of look at all this stuff as you think about Peter and who he is. Peter's just a dude living his life fishing. Just a guy fishing, running his own business. Jesus shows up on the scenes. And he says, hey, drop your nets and follow me. For whatever reason, Peter's heart is moved, and he does. And he takes this radical step to drop his nets and begin to follow Jesus. And we find out about Peter. Peter is a man who's not afraid to say what he thinks. He's not afraid to put his words out there. In fact, there's this incredible moment in Peter's life and in the life of the early disciples where Jesus asked them, what are they all saying about me out there? Who am I? Different people go back and forth, and Peter goes, you're the Christ. You're the Messiah. In other words, you're the one that was promised. You're the one that is sent to save us. And Jesus affirms him and says, yes, on the proclamation you have just been made, that the church will be built and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. And it's like this incredible moment. And then not long after that, they're out and about on a boat, and what looks like a ghost is walking across the water, and it's Jesus. And Jesus calls, and Peter, in courage and faith, steps out and begins to do something none of us have done. He walks on the water. By the way, if you have, find me in my office next week. I'd love to talk with you. And he walks on the water, but listen, as fast as he walks on the water, his faith dissipates and he falls in the water. This incredible moment followed by what happened? Oh, I took my eyes off of you. We see this moment where Jesus predicts his fate, his death. I'm gonna be killed and they're gonna betray me. And Peter just puffs out his chest and he says, that'll never happen, not on my watch. Ain't no way you're ever gonna die. And he's so out of pocket with his response. Jesus looks at him and says, get behind me, Satan. I mean, the same guy who said you're the Christ, in this moment, Jesus says, you have no idea what you're talking about. Get behind me, Satan. Fast forward a little bit later, Jesus is at the Last Supper. And he gets ready he puts on his towel and he gets on a knee and he gets ready to wash their feet and he's all in. And Peter's like, you're not washing my feet, dude. And Jesus looks back at him. He's like, you don't even know what you're saying. I need to wash your feet, bro. Conversation ends after that, and just a few moments later, Jesus says, this is what's gonna happen. And Peter goes, Jesus, I will never betray you. I will lay my life down for you. I will die for you. Jesus looks back at him and he goes, hey bro, you won't even go to bed tonight before you deny me 3 times. I mean, this is a dude puffing out his chest. I'll do anything. I will die for you. And Jesus goes, no, you won't. Here in just a few short hours. Then after that, after hearing that, you might remember Jesus gets betrayed, he gets arrested, he's moving through, and Peter puffs out his chest, grabs a sword, and cuts a dude's ear off to defend Jesus. Jesus is like, calm down, bro, you don't understand what's about to happen. Does a crazy cool miracle, puts the dude's ear back on. Moves on, and just a few short hours later, a little girl shows up and sees Peter and says, Didn't you hang out with that guy that's on trial? 3 times he looks and he says, no, 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 and actually calls down curses upon her. Jesus revisits him in a story that we'll look at this weekend and basically reinstates him back into the crew to get ready to send him on mission. Then we get to Acts chapter 2, and Peter drops an incredible, incredible sermon. 3,000 people, a mega church happens over in a minute. And people are reached as Peter's boldness. And yet just a few chapters later, we find out after he did that, Peter's being racist against the Gentiles. Up and down, up and down. There's a point where I'm sure I would have said, I'm folding the hand on this clown. I'm over it. He can't even shut up long enough for me to tell him what's gonna happen. He can't even lean in and listen for what I'm gonna do. I go to serve him and he wants to argue with me about serving him. I want us to open our Bibles, turn to John chapter 21. And as we go to John chapter 21, and we think about the fact that our tendency as people is to fold the bad hands. Our tendency is to run, and our tendency as the way we live before God is to give God reason to fold on us. Peter was no different. He gave God reason to fold, and I want to set the context up of John chapter 21 and remind you of what's going on. It's some of the pieces of the story that I've already said to you. Jesus has been betrayed by Peter, by Judas, but before that, denied by Peter 3 times. And as that's happened, he's denied him, and then he's run away as Jesus was crucified. Doesn't stay around to watch it happen. Jesus has been crucified, he's died, he's resurrected, he's come back. And the boys are fishing. And they haven't caught any fish, and Jesus shows up and he's like, hey, you guys got any fish? They're like, no. He's like, throw the nets to the other side, which had to be annoying. They're a bunch of fishermen. They catch a bunch of fish, and then they get ready to have breakfast. They eat together, and then in this moment, Jesus approaches this man who's been doing this up and down. And I just want you to watch the human interaction between Jesus and the way he comes to him and nurtures him and talks to him, but yet deals with him in the way that he deals with all of us as he doesn't fold on us. John chapter 21, beginning in verse 15, when they had finished eating, so everyone's finished eating the fish that they've caught, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? So he asked him a direct question like, hey, do you really love me more than the rest of the disciples? And what he's trying to do is to remind Peter of what Peter had said back in John 13. I love you. I will never walk away from you. I love you more than everyone. I'm good with you. In other words, look at me. Jesus is trying to get Peter to reflect on his actual heart. He's trying to get his attention to show him where he's at in the process. And so then Peter says, yes, Lord, he said, you know that I love you. So Jesus looks at him, he says, here's my command to you then, go feed my sheep. I wanna leverage you, I wanna use you, I wanna call you, go feed my sheep. So then the story goes on and Jesus does it again. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. So the same thing happens again. And Peter's probably thinking, okay, good. I'm glad we got this out of the way. I'm glad he's talked to me. I'm heard. I've learned my lesson. I'm going to move on. I'm going to go feed the sheep. But Jesus wants to bring him fully back to the moment of the up and down. And so he says, again, he comes to him. And he says, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said to him, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him the third time, do you love me? He said, Lord, you know all the things. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my sheep. And he's mad because he recognizes in this moment, Jesus is taking him through a recognition of 3 times the way he had denied him 3 times. He's walking him through the process of going, I know who you are. I see who you are. I'm not folding the hand on you, but I'm not done developing you. And so I'm gonna walk you through what you've done. You can imagine the pain and the honesty that Peter has had in that moment as he reflects, and the text goes on. Very truly, I tell you, when you were younger, you dressed yourself and went where you wanted. This is gonna be a little bit confusing because it's a metaphor as Jesus is prophetically telling Peter something about his life. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands and someone else will dress you and lead you where you want to go. And then we understand actually what he's telling him. Jesus said this to indicate the kind of death by which Peter would glorify God. And if you know church history, Peter was crucified with his arms out wide, upside down, because he didn't feel it right to be crucified the same way Jesus was. Now listen to this. This is crazy. Follow this life change of Peter. The same guy who denied Jesus 3 times at the threats of a little girl is the same guy that Jesus says, I'm going to change your life so much that you will die a death of crucifixion on my behalf. And between now and then, Peter, I'm gonna keep changing you. I'm gonna keep working on you. I'm gonna keep developing you. I know that just a few short days ago, you couldn't even look at a girl and say, I roll with Jesus. But I'm gonna change you to the point where you will die on my behalf. Peter, would you glorify? He says, then go glorify God and follow me. Go, follow me, go all in. You can almost think about Peter going, wow, okay, I'm back in the group. I hear it, I've dealt with it, I've processed it, all 3. Things are good. I've heard it. I follow him, feed his sheep. God's gonna use me in an incredible way. And as fast as Peter is changed and good here, we see him be a knucklehead again. Because as fast as the roller coaster of our behavior goes up towards God is as fast as it comes down away. Look at what happens next. It's so human. Peter turned and he saw that the disciple whom Jesus loved was following him. Now, if you know the text, this is in John. John is the author writing, and he refers to himself in the Gospel of John multiple times as the one that Jesus loved. And so John and Jesus had a very strong connection, arguably his best friend. And so Peter gets done with this little feed my sheep moment. Do you love me? You're gonna die on my behalf. And then he looks around and he goes, oh, there's John. Wait a minute. I'm gonna die of crucifixion. Now that I think about that, I don't know that I love that. This was the one who had leaned back against Jesus. And he said, Lord, who's going to betray you? And he remembers that. And then he says, when Peter saw him, he asked, Lord, what about him? In other words, hey, I'm gonna die of crucifixion. What's gonna happen to John? Because as I kind of process this, I hear you're gonna change me and I'm not gonna deny you anymore. I'm gonna get crucified. I don't know that that's fair. Can you tell me how John's story ends? And Jesus, at this point, the patience, I've fed you, I've reinstated you, I've connected with you, and now you wanna look at me and ask what's gonna happen for someone else. I mean, come on, let's just be honest. Aren't there times where this happens, where God is so gracious to us and kind to us and merciful to us and gentle to us, and then we see something else happen to someone and we're like, God, why'd you do that in their life? Why'd you bless them so much? Why aren't you gonna get them? And I love Jesus' response, because I would have smacked Peter, but he doesn't. Jesus answered, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? You must follow me. In other words, Peter, shut up and mind your business. Just go live your life, dude. Follow me. Let me take care of things. I will continue to interact with you. You just follow me and I will take care of John. And the story goes, and because of this, a rumor spread among the believers that this disciple would not die. John does die, but Jesus did not say that he would not die. He only said, if I want him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you? I think the reason that I wrestle or I acknowledge and feel so connected to Peter's story personally is, one, Peter was not afraid to talk. And as a result, Peter got himself in trouble. I know how that goes. I've seen that happen in my own life quite consistently. But probably more than that, I just love that Peter is on this, I love you not, I love you not, I'll obey you not. And in all of that, Jesus could have looked at Peter and said, the ROI on this is just too much. There's someone that'll get this quicker. There's someone that'll get this easier. There's someone who's more talented. I am just gonna walk away. I'm gonna fold the hand. But when I look at Peter's story, here's why my faith gets faith. Here's why I fall more in love with Jesus. Here is why I wanna worship him and sing to him and keep following him. Because the otherness of God is this: no matter how many reasons you or I give God to leave, he always stays. No matter how many reasons. No matter how many times he lets us walk on the water and then our faith cowers, he stays. No matter how many times we deny him, he stays. No matter how many times we argue with him about his plan, he stays. No matter how many times we pray weak prayers, he stays. No matter how many times we don't speak up on his behalf, he stays. We give him reason after reason after reason to go, no, done, fold, move on, cash in my chips, get another man, get another woman, get someone who will hang in there. But no matter what we do, no matter how many times, this is insane. God never quits on you. He never quits on you. And I don't need to know what you've done. I don't need to know what your life is like. Not only does God have the power to reach you, but once he reaches you, no matter how obedient you are or how disobedient you are, how many times you win or how many times you lose, he stays with you. When you wake up tomorrow, new mercies. When you wake up the day after that, new mercies. And the day after that, new mercies. It doesn't matter. It's insane. If I was God, no. If you were God, no. You and I fold on people and hands all the time that if God was God, he would look and he would go, I understand it from your perspective, but you don't understand. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter how you behave, I'm not going anywhere. It's nuts. And why did Peter change? Because every single time God gave him a reason to leave. God said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm gonna keep speaking in your life. I'm gonna keep going after you. I'm gonna keep discipling you. I'm gonna keep moving you forward. And Peter's like, another reason to leave, another reason to leave, another reason to leave. And God's like, I'm not going. I'm right here. I cannot believe this, but here's what I know. You know what I can get from God, no matter how stupid I am? He'll give me more forgiveness. He'll give me more kindness. He'll give me more mercy. He'll give me more patience. He'll give me more conviction. He'll give me more teaching. No matter what I do, he keeps coming back to me. Come on, man. In the biggest moment of Jesus' life, when Jesus needed his boys, guys, stay awake. Whatever you do, keep praying for me. They're falling asleep. I need you to stay with me. Peter denies, betrays, runs, hide, isn't there. And yet after it's done, Jesus goes and takes him to Bob Evans. Coworker looks at you the wrong way. Fold. Relationship in your family goes the wrong way. Fold. Person you've been investing in at church doesn't quite work out. Fold. Small group wasn't awesome the first 2 times. Fold. And yet God, over and over and over, no matter how many reasons we give him, he stays. Guys, the process of life change, theologically speaking, is called sanctification. It's the process of a normal person like me being made like Jesus. And while justification, me being saved by God and being brought into the family of God, is completely 100% God and what God does. Sanctification, listen to me, is a partnership between God's work in my life and my work in my life as I join in what God's calling me to do. And here's what blows my mind as it relates to my life change and your life change. God is always gonna be faithful in his part of your life change. I'm not trying to hurt anyone's feelings, but listen to me. If you don't change more into the image of God and you're a follower of Jesus, listen to me, it's not because God went somewhere else. It's because you're not working with him. Because God will always do his part. And no matter how many reasons you or I give him to jettison and fold and quit and stop, God will stay. Some of you have been Christians a long time. And I just want you to think back to like when you were a young Christian and then you like went to college. How many reasons over those 4 to 7 years did you give God to go, I'm done? It's bad ROI. It's not, come on. How many times in your public relationships and the way you've behaved at a ball field or at the office or in your living room, have you given God a go? I'm out. And yet Peter reminds me when I look at his story of how God changed him, that God is always faithful to uphold his part of life change. One of the reasons my faith grows is that when I look back at my life and I know the reasons I've given God to walk out and bail on me. He's a friend that sticks closer than a brother. He never goes, he stays, and I can give him a million reasons to leave, and God will be there. He's never going to change. In this story, we see some things that happen as a result of this as we think about God's work in our life and while we're in process. And because God does certain things to us, how should we respond on the other side to what God is doing? Because we give God a million reasons to go, but he doesn't leave, he stays. How does this all play out, all right? Here's the first thing that we can learn from Peter, even in this story, that I would encourage you to think about as God interacts with you. Number one, stay teachable. Stay teachable. You might want to put in parentheses that because God never leaves, even though you give him reasons, he stays. Listen to me. One of the reasons or one of the ways that God stays in your life is he's going to keep correcting you. He's going to keep teaching you. He's gonna keep revealing things about you that you don't know or that you don't understand about yourself. See, what he was trying to do in that moment on the beach that day with Peter was, remember how you said you loved me? Remember how you said you would never go away? Remember how you said you would never betray me? I'm asking you if you really love me because I want you to be honest and humble and teachable about who you really are. And I need to correct you, Peter, that you're not as mature as you think you are. You're not exactly where you think you are. I need you to get yourself to understand that there is plenty of room for you, Peter, to keep growing. Some of us have been Christians long enough that we think we are fine and we no longer become teachable and humble. We think we're at places that we're not. But one of the ways that God is going to keep working on your life is he is going to keep revealing to you places that you need to grow. And what's the posture we should have to that? I was talking to a pastor friend of mine not long ago. He was telling me about a group of pastors that were meeting in Texas, about 80 of them. Some of them very well-known pastors. If I told you their names, many of you would know who they are. And one of them, a group of them were there to get up and kind of lead pastors in different devotions each day. And one of them, who leads a substantially large church in New York City, was there to give a talk. And he said, it was incredible to watch him, Keith. He said, because before he gave his talk, he came the day before and he sat on the front row and he opened up his notebook and he took notes and he asked questions, and his attitude and his humility was incredible. And this guy's got a ministry and people know him and he's famous and he's a big deal. And we couldn't believe he was there. And then he got up and he gave his talk and he had a soft heart, and he didn't go and get in a car and leave. And he didn't go and get on a plane, but he stayed there every single day and sat in the front row and opened his folder and took notes time after time. He said, you wanna know why that brother's being used by the Lord? Because that brother is teachable. He has a posture to say to God, God, teach me. And here's what I'm telling you. If you will listen and you will pay attention, God is gonna stay faithful in teaching you. The question is not, is God gonna teach you? The question is, are you gonna listen? If you interact with God and his word, I promise you he's gonna teach you. Because this is alive and sharper than any two-edged sword. I promise you, if you let other Christians speak into your life, God is gonna teach you. I promise you, if you seek God's Spirit, God is gonna teach you. In other words, God in his faithfulness, even though you give him reasons to leave, and what is one of those reasons to leave? He keeps teaching you and we keep ignoring it. Have you ever taught people something? Every school teacher is gonna love what I'm about to say. You ever taught people something over and over and over and they still don't get it? And you wanna look at them and go, are you serious? You still don't, you still can't. And over and over and over, Jesus keeps teaching us, hey, Peter, come here. Do you love me? Dude, of course I love you. Jesus, I love you. No, Peter, look at me, look at me. I need you to ask if the habits of your life reflect the heart that you're saying you have. Do you love me? Yeah, of course I love you, Jesus. Peter, look at me. Do you love me? Because he's trying to teach Peter that he doesn't know as much as he thinks he knows, that he's got to grow, that he's not as humble as he should be, that God's saying to you, I'm going to keep correcting you. We give God a million reasons to leave, but he always stays. And one of the ways he stays, and one of the ways he interacts with us, is he keeps teaching us. Here's the problem. Sometimes we don't think we need to be taught. And God's just gonna keep teaching, he's gonna keep teaching, he's gonna keep teaching, he's gonna keep correcting. So stay teachable. In the process of life change, Peter had to stay teachable. Number two, you're gonna fail, so fail forward. You're gonna fail, so fail forward. Peter failed over and over and over. We've talked about some different ways. He was reminded of it. And this was certainly not the last time Peter would fail. He would continue to fail. But here's the thing. I want you to in parentheses. In the first one, you put corrected. In the second one, in parentheses, by fail forward, I want you to put the word convicted. Not only is God going to correct you about what you don't know and what you don't understand and what you can't see, God in his kindness and faithfulness will convict you of when you're wrong. And I know we don't like that. We're like, how is that kind? Because loving, kind people don't want you to keep blowing up your life. And you're gonna mess up. So if you're gonna fail forward. Repent and turn. Hey, Peter, do you love me? Go feed my sheep. This time, just go feed my sheep. Don't puff out your chest. Don't make proclamations you don't know anything about. Just repent. Go feed my sheep. I've shared over the years that I love to water ski. I've water skied pretty much since I can remember as a kid. Taught many people to water ski. Whenever you teach people to water ski, there's like certain things that over and over people do, no matter who they are and how old they are, when they're learning. And what you hope is that when they fall the first time and you give them some feedback, they listen to it so they can apply it the next time so they have a better chance of getting up. I've shared before that one of the most common things that people do when they get up and they try to water ski for the very first time is they think the best way to get balance is to grab the rope and pull on it. And you're laughing because when they pull on the rope, the skis go forward and they fall on their rear. So you go back and you drive back and you circle around them and you look at them. You go, you did a great job. You stayed in your crouch. You let the boat do the work. You did awesome. You got up. But when you get up this time, whatever you do, don't pull on the rope. And they get up and they start to go. And I say, one more time. I'm going to tell you one more time, then I'm going to mock you. Don't pull on the rope. Wow. Because what you want is the person to learn from their failure and when they fall so that next time they'll get up and they won't do it and they keep going forward. You're going to sin. Being a Christian isn't about being sinless, it's about sinning less. And God, in his grace, while you give him reasons to walk away from you, is gonna come to you and say, no, I'm still with you, I still love you, but I'm gonna convict you about what you did. I'm gonna convict you about what you say. So next time you'll fail forward and you won't say it. I'm gonna convict you about being too slow to forgive. So next time you'll forgive quicker. I'm gonna convict you about the fact that you were stingy. So next time you'll be generous. I'm gonna convict you that you're so quick to give yourself grace, but so slow to give anyone else grace. And I'm gonna do that so next time it happens, you won't pull on the rope, but instead you'll fail forward and you'll look more like me. And God over and over and over in his grace is gonna come to you and he's gonna say, I love you enough to tell you, stop that. I love you enough to say, change. I love you enough to change you if you'll work with me. So God's gonna show up and he's gonna come and he's gonna talk to you and he's gonna say, hey, Fail forward. The conviction's real. Grow, change, keep getting closer to the Lord. So he said, hey, Peter, I need you to stay teachable. I need you to fail forward. I'm going to correct you. I'm going to convict you. And then the third one, he looked at Peter and he said, and I need you to harness your zeal, bro. I need you to harness your zeal. And the word that I want you to put here in parentheses is the word called. God, in his grace, even though we give him many reasons to leave, he stays, and that he keeps saying he wants to use us. Peter, go feed my sheep. Peter, go feed my sheep. Peter, go feed my sheep. We see in Acts 2 that he does, but he wants to point Peter to what he should be doing. He wants to leverage Peter. He wants to harness Peter. I say this to the staff. I say this to other people. I would always rather tame a maniac than wake up a corpse. But the truth is, when you have maniacs, if you don't tame them, they'll hurt somebody. And Peter kept hurting people, including himself. He kept hurting people. And God said, I need to take the power of it. It's like there's all that pressure built up in the fire hydrant, and then you hook the hose up to it, and you put the nozzle, and there's all that power. And all that power comes out as the water goes through the hose. And you know this. Aim the hose at the right thing, good news. Aim the hose at the wrong thing, bad news. All that harnessed power can be used for good, put out fires, can be used for bad, knock over people. And he looks at Peter and he says, Peter, go feed my sheep. I'm calling you to make a difference, but I need you to see. Some of you have incredible, incredible zeal to know information. But rather than wasting that zeal doing everything you can to study fantasy football or the next political policy, use it to study God's word. Some of you have incredible, incredible zeal to be bold. But rather than just using that to pop off at the mouth to some coach or some umpire or some family member that makes you mad, harness it to tell people about the goodness of Jesus. Some of you have incredible zeal and ability to want to make a difference and really create things and be used to make a difference with your hands or with your mind. Rather than just making a great career, leverage that to invest in people for the glory and legacy of God. Harness your zeal. Peter, you are bold. You are courageous. You are willing to speak up. Go feed my sheep. And here's what's crazy about God. He doesn't fold on us. He doesn't take us out of the game. He keeps giving us at-bats to be called again, to be used over and over and over. We give him a million reasons to say fold, to leave, but God stays, and he keeps correcting us, and he keeps convicting us, and he keeps calling us. Here's why I am encouraged and my faith grows this weekend. Because when I think of Peter's story, Peter's journey reminds us that God moves towards us even when we move away. It's amazing. I mean, isn't this the essence of the gospel? That the news that God loves and desires a relationship with humanity? Isn't this Romans 5? While we were yet sinners, God moved towards us. Who set up the breakfast? It wasn't Peter. It was Jesus. Who went and started the conversation to reinstate him? Who went and continued to love him? It was Jesus. Here's what's amazing. You're gonna keep stiff-arming Jesus. You're gonna keep Heismaning Jesus. You're gonna keep telling Jesus no, and Jesus is just gonna keep moving towards you. He does. He just keeps going. It's like reason again, reason to leave, reason to leave. He's like, I'm not leaving. And I love that this story reminds me that no matter what I do, no matter what you do, no matter how you live, God in his grace will keep pursuing you. Here's your homework assignment this weekend. I think it's a helpful one. I think it's a fun one. I think it's something that can really encourage your heart. If you're a follower of Jesus, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write down and worship up. Ready? Here's what I want you to write down. I want you to write down just one. You might say you have a bunch. Just one reason you gave God to fold on you. Just one thing in your life that you're like, yep, if I was God, when I did that, I would have been out. I'd have been done. I would have said no ROI on that. I'm out, I fold, I'm done, I can't, I'm not going to. And then as you write that down, I want you to worship up, because here's the good news. He didn't leave. He stayed. And he kept correcting, and he kept convicting, and he kept calling, and he kept walking with you, and he kept giving you love, and he kept giving you mercy. So write it down. And I don't know, maybe you'll get crazy. You'll be like, you know what? I'll do another one. Here's another reason I should have been gone. And then you'll worship him and say, but he didn't go anywhere. Here's another reason I should have been gone, but he didn't go anywhere. I want you to just think back about like the last 5 years of your life and how uncertain life is. There are things in your life that 5 years ago you would have said, this is exactly the way it's going to be. People that will be in your life, maybe the job that you have, maybe the home that you have, the health that you would have, the opportunities you would have, things your kids would be doing, and you were certain. And then over that 5 years, health changed, the stock market changed, the world changed, your family changed, your job changed, culture changed. And everything that you were so confident about 5 years ago, you look at now and you go, man, the world is uncertain. And yet I want to remind you this weekend, in a world of uncertainty, the most certain thing that you can hold on to is that God is never going anywhere. Your family might quit on you, God forbid, might pass away. Your job may go away. Your favorite show, your favorite team may stop. Your money may dissipate. Your health may go away. Your possessions may go away. It all may go away. You may say, I'm done with that. But in all of that, God's going nowhere. He's going nowhere. And as it relates to you personally, he is never going to take a single movement away from you. And how does life change happen? Life change happens that even in our failures and even in our reasons to give God to leave us, we recognize that God stays, and because he stays, we go back to him and we say, God, keep convicting me. God, keep correcting me. God, keep calling me, and I'm gonna stay, and I'm gonna stay with it because I know you're not going anywhere, so I'm gonna stay with it. And then the next thing you know, we wake up and something crazy happens. We're willing to die on behalf of Jesus. If life change doesn't happen in your life as a Christian, it's not because God's not working in your life, because he's going nowhere. And for all the reasons you and I give God to leave, God stays. I guess in the end, I would say God's a terrible poker player, because it seems like when he should fold him, he stays. And in his grace and his mercy and his love, he won't bail. Hope that encourages your soul and draws you near to the Creator. Let's pray together. Father, I can't speak for anybody else, but I can speak for me and all the reasons that I've given you to bail. Things I've said, things I've done, attitudes I've had, moments of cowardice, moments of hypocrisy or deception, immaturity, worldliness. And yet in all of it, in all of those reasons, since the time I met you when I was 13, you never moved, and you won't. You're faithful. If you'll stick with Peter, you will stick with us. So help us to be in awe of your faithfulness. Help us to continue to see that. Help us interact with that in a way that it will change us. And may faith be put in our faith that you are so faithful. We thank you that for all the reasons we give you to leave, you stay. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.